I met Tim, he was one of my students. He was an art and design student, and that's how we met. And a few years later, I think I saw his wallpapers, or his images, and all his artworks, and thought, you know, they're very New Zealand, and just wanted to work with them. So the three pieces that you've just seen were one-offs, and I didn't reproduce them to sell. But we did make some T-shirts, and he was amazing. He still printed them himself with screens, and they were sort of patched images, and he would tear the newspaper all individually, or each one was still individual, but they were sold as commercial pieces. Yeah. And then with Philip's pieces were one-offs. I showed him some shapes, and they're at the last two of the show. And what he did was he came into the workroom, and I showed him some fabrics. He told me what he liked, and I showed him some shapes, and he just sort of told me what he was working with letters at the time, and so he thought he'd work with NG and my name Sharon, and it just evolved. It just kind of worked, you know, and he sort of, yeah, and so.
And I was talking to Sharon about the difference between her collaborations and the work that Doris DuPont's done, which is very much a commercial transaction on the meterage of fabric. There was only one collection where she actually had toing and froing with the artist, and that was the Richard Killeen collection, sampler. But a lot of your collaborations have been kind of very true collaborations, haven't they, in that they've supplied out like the artwork, or you've supplied the garment that they've then painted on, or
it's kind of worked more like
more art pieces, really.
But each person working on their own. Like when I worked with Ralph, he came to stay, and over dinner, I sort of gave him. I sort of showed him some ideas, and he sort of said, "Oh, I think I like this," and I've got a window, a black window, and so he just started, and that's how it started, and he gave me the artwork and said, "I'll leave it up to you. You put the placements on. It's yours now," and that's how that happened.
So there've been a few. I think the most recent one was 2008. Was it with the graffiti artist from New York?
Yeah.
So that's just an aspect of your work that's been quite personally enjoyable, isn't it? Just with the transaction between the artist and yourself. But I think I've done this every time, gone over time, but and there's lots to talk about. But maybe we'll just end with another highlight, which was being selected for Tranoi, a trade fair in Paris, held during Fashion Week, isn't it?
It's around that time, so it's March and October.
Yeah, and New Zealand Trade and Enterprise paid to promote New Zealand fashion, a number of 4 fashion designers to go over, but you were personally, which is great, you maybe tell about your personal selection by quite a significant presence.
I think that Zach Cole, who works for New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, is working in Paris at the time. I think he had quite an influence in picking my label, because I wasn't one of the favourites at the time. Well, I'm still not, probably, but it was quite odd that I was in with the group, and he had visited. He went to Fashion Week, saw the show, I think, and he came to visit us. It was, and he pushed my label.
Sabatini, Zambezi and Nomdi, a similar group that had gone to London Fashion Week. And So yeah, that was a real privilege. And they funded 2 years, seasons of that, didn't they? And then three seasons.
Part funded 3.
3 seasons.
Yes.
And did you carry on with them?
No, because it's, you know,
I imagine it's hideously expensive. And
well, it is, and also it does take so much time. You know, for people like I still go away twice a year to buy for the store, but you know, you have limited budget. You try and support and grow the labels that you're bringing in, and so very, you know, old look, but there's not very much time because there's so much to see, and so you really have to know how to, you know, you have to research and contact the people first so that they know your work, that you go, you make your appointments, because I think a showroom is much better than a big fair to exhibit the label.
And I did get to talk about, we've got to talk about some processes and some influences, but I just want to say about Tranoi that I think it's meant to represent New Zealand fashion, and although you know, you don't necessarily want designs with fern leaves and things on them, I think your work is great because of the very subtle references to New Zealand, the colour, the landscape.
Yeah, yes, and the casualness of it.
Yes, so it's, Okay, just to finish, what advice would you have for students starting out, if they're any final year students but going out into the big bad commercial world next year, or this year? What advice would you have?
Well, I think we're all so different, and everyone has has their strengths in different areas, whether it be design and business. You know, that type of thing. So, you know, I do recommend retail because it really exposes your label. But, you know, when you start retailing, it takes a lot of time in running a business, problem solving, and not designing. So I feel as though, like, for our boutique, we've opened it 5 years ago. I've really let my label, I haven't put much time into it, but I'm ready to do that again now. But, you know, if you have someone who can run the business for you, and yeah, it's such a personal thing that even with having fantastic staff, which I do have, you have to still solve some problems. It's very time consuming. Or, you know, I recommend, you know, what I would have done if I was ambitious, you know, when I left Polytech, I would go and do a course at St Martin's, do a postgrad course, and because if you want to be a designer, an international designer, there's the opportunity there. Like the media from Gap magazine, Vogue, all the editors are invited. They have an end of year show, and they're looking, and they expose the new designers.
That's great. Look, thank you so much, and please join me in thanking Sharon for being here this evening, because it's quite a privilege, I think, to hear. It's not very often that I think that you get to actually talk with a designer. I've been very privileged myself, but thank you again for coming in.